Rev up your engines!
Well, here's yet another reason not to believe Consumer Reports. Believe it or not, they said the 2022 Nissan Sentra is the best car, better than the Toyota Corolla. The Toyota Corolla was on the top of their list for the last 2 years, but now they unseated with the Nissan Sentra. Obviously, these guys know nothing about vehicles, right? Fall apart Nissan Sentras versus the Toyota Corolla might go a million miles. I don't know if there's bribery going on or just plain stupidity at these Consumer Reports places. It's just too much. I mean, I can't stop laughing at that one. Probably one of the best line of cars ever made if you want dependable transportation, a Toyota Corolla. And they say, oh, the Nissan Sentra's better now. I just can't believe this. You know, they base it on the nuttiest things they can base on. Sort of like those ones that they do of best car in initial quality. What, the first 2 seconds you own it? Anybody that says the Sentra is better than the Corolla doesn't know anything about cars. But the sad point is, some clowns are going to read this Consumer Reports and believe it and go out and buy a Nissan Sentra. Listen to Scotty. I've been fixing cars for 53 years. Nissan Sentras are pretty good cars like 20, 30 years ago. Not anymore. You'd be fooled by one of those. I just can't believe these things that I put out there. Waffle Man 95 says, my 2011 Chevy Silverado was totaled yesterday. What truck do you recommend to replace it? Well, I wouldn't buy any of the new ones because most of them are made like crap. If you can find an older one, try to do that. Ford or a Chevy or a Toyota Tundras, they can last forever. Your only problem is the price of used trucks has gone sky high too, along with the new ones. It's a bad time to be buying. I hope they gave you a bunch of money for your old truck. If they did, great. But if not, it's hard finding good used trucks for decent money. Even the crappy ones are going for a bunch of money. But I would look at old Fords, old Toyota Tundras, and old Chevys. But I wouldn't buy anything newer than your 2011 because then they started to go downhill massively. Israel says, I got a Honda Civic 2002. Check engine light's been on, the Summary SRI light is on, PO 740, torque converter clutch circuit is open. On the outside of the transmission, there's a bunch of solenoids. Clutch control solenoid. You could buy the one for that at the Honda dealer, just bolt off and bolt on, put it on. Pray that fixes it. Often it will, because if not, and it's broken inside the torque converter of the transmission, it's going to cost you a fortune pulling the transmission off the car. But a lot of times it's just the solenoid itself has gone bad. Go to a Honda dealer, buy one, they just bolt on, bolt off, take the plug off, put the plug on. And if that fixes it, great. A lot of times it does. I've fixed many of them that way. Justin said, our Toyota FJ Cruisers are rust buckets I've been hearing about. Canadian driver. I'm worried about salt issues. Well, yes, they are. I've seen some. I'm in Rhode Island. Guys brought me them from Rhode Island, Maine, Massachusetts. They were rust buckets. The frames rot away. They didn't do a very good job when they built the frames of those things. I didn't see it in Texas, New Mexico, Arizona cars. No. But you live in Canada where they put a lot of salt. A lot of them are rust buckets. If you look at one, a used one, you gotta buy a used one. They don't sell them anymore. And it's rusted, don't buy it. The frame would need to replace. To replace the frame of a vehicle, you have to take the entire vehicle, I mean the entire vehicle, off the frame, everything. Wheels, tires, engine, seats, everything. Then the new frame, bolt everything back together again. It costs a small fortune. So yes, many of them are rust buckets. It might be one of the reasons they don't make them anymore. Yamatri says, what do you think of a 351 Cleveland 2-valve? Okay, for those of you who don't know, that is a Ford V8 engine, 351 cubic inches with 2 valves per cylinder, made in Cleveland, Ohio. That's why it's called the Cleveland. Ones they made in Windsor, Ontario were called 351 Windsors because they were made in Windsor, Ontario. Personally, I prefer the Canadian ones. They did a little better job, but they're not bad, the American ones. I just happen to like the Windsor. The Canadians seem to do a better job building stuff than Americans do lately. And it's an older engine because it's a 2-valve. They're still pretty well made. Leonardo says, does anyone know why diesel burns oil? They get old, they burn oil because the piston rings wear out, and then the pistons don't seal right, and the oil that lubricates the bottom pushes through the seals, and then it's burnt, and it burns oil. Or the valve seals on the intake valves, when they open to let in the air to the diesel, they suck the oil that lubricates them because the oil seals are gone. That's the main one. On the old ones, it's real easy to test. You just do a compression test of the engine, and the compression's low, and then you squirt some oil in, and the compression goes up higher. It means the piston rings are worn. If you check it and the compression stays almost the same, that would mean it's the valve seals when you check them when they're wet, when you pour some oil in, because the oil doesn't affect the seal on the valves, only the pistons going up and down. Mo says, Scotty, I bought a 2001 Tacoma 4x4 last year with 75,000 miles in Buffalo for $5,000. Is it a good truck or was originally from California? If it was originally from California, it probably has no rust on it. Some of the older Tacomas had problems with the frames rusting. So, if I were you, the frame's not rusted down and you're in Buffalo, completely clean the frame down with steel wool and whatever you want to clean it with, power washer, and I would have it coated or sprayed with anti-rust corrosion, maybe have it undercoated so that it doesn't start to rust, because they had a problem with those rusting. They use a lot of salt in Buffalo. It's going to rot everything out. You got it from California. If it's not rusted now, definitely reseal the whole thing just to make sure it isn't going to rust. Now, if you were in California, you bought a Tacoma from Buffalo, big mistake there. It'd be all starting to rust and rot. It's too late. Once it starts, you can't stop. Outlaw Guitar says, I got a 2014 Honda Civic. Pulls to the right. Tires are a year old and the tread wear is even. Something that can be, other than alignment, can cause it to pull. Oh, yeah. Especially if you brake and it pulls, that means the brake caliper's sticking. And you'd have to replace that or replace the hose that feeds it if it's building up back pressure. You can have worn parts that do that too. If you got a worn tie rod or ball joint, it's going to sit weird and it's going to pull to one side. So it isn't necessarily just the alignment. You want to do my video, how to check out your car's suspension, Scotty, watch that on YouTube. And you can see how you can jack it up, pull on it, see if you got any parts that are worn. And when you do have worn parts, replace them. Because if they're worn, the tire isn't going to go straight. It will pull to one side or the other. Generally, it pulls to the side that has the problem most of the time. Miguel Garcia says, Scotty, got an 05 Acura, burns a quart of oil every 3,000 miles, has 135,000 miles. How can I make it better? The only thing you can really do is change the PCV valve. If it's sucking it in, great. If not, live with it. A quart of oil every 3,000 miles on a car that's 17 years old isn't bad. That's hardly any. You're not going to rebuild an engine for that if it runs okay. That costs thousands of dollars, and they can still go a long, long way. Sometimes just changing that cheap old PCV valve will do it. Watch my video on how to change PCV valves. You can see how simple it is to do. A lot of times that'll fix it, because it will then be sucking in air from the PCV, but also oil from the engine, and it'll burn some oil. Quantum Mercury says, greeting from Ontario, Canada, with a 2017 Lexus RC300 V6 6-speed automatic with 60,000 kilometers. Be a good car along long-term as daily driver. It certainly would if it was taken care of. Trust no one, of course. Have a mechanic like me check it out before you buy it. But a V6 Lexus that's 5 years old with only 60,000 kilometers, so that's like, I don't know, 32,000 miles. Those things can run 400,000 or 500,000 miles. It would be a great car. As long as it hasn't been wrecked, flooded, whatever. You need a mechanic to check it because you can't trust anybody. Then you'd find out, okay, it's good or it's bad, and then you like it. Mechanic says it's good, buy it. Skyborg says, looking at an 07 Sierra 2500 with Allison transmission diesel. What is better, Duramax or Cummins? All right, the Cummins diesel is much better than the Duramax. Plus, here's the oddball thing. I don't know why they did it, but GM builds the trucks, right? Well, if they have the Duramax engine in them, the fuel injection system isn't as good. They didn't put a lift pump to take the fuel from the gas tank to the fuel injection pump, and they often break because of that. But the Cummins ones, they put a lift pump in. Even though they use the same fuel injection system, it's a German Bosch fuel injection system. The Cummins, they put a lift pump in, but they didn't put a lift pump in the Duramax. And a lot of times, then you got to pay a whole bunch of money to put a lift pump in because they don't run right when they get older. Where the Cummins diesel, even though they're both the same GM truck, have that lift pump. So I would definitely get one with a Cummins. It's a better engine anyways. Okay, the Postal Service says they're not buying more electric delivery vehicles. And they reject Biden's plea to buy more electrical mail trucks. They're buying 165,000 of these vehicles from the company. The one that's based in Wisconsin, but they're going to be building them in a non-union state, South Carolina, one of the states there. They were whining, you're not buying enough electric trucks. Well, the Postal Service is too bad. We said maybe 10%. That's what we're sticking to, because they said we don't have the money to electrify. The post office says we don't have an extra $3 to $4 billion to implement this, right? BS that they're trying to throw on us. The post office, a government entity, says we don't have the $3 to $4 billion to implement more electric trucks. This is just the implementation of electric trucks. Well, where the heck is the electricity coming from? This is just the post office. If they try to electrify the whole country, it would be trillions and trillions of dollars just to make the power plants to create the electricity. Their fantasy now is meeting reality. The rubber of electric cars is meeting a road where people find, man, this is going to cost a small fortune. Who's going to pay for it? And the post office says we can't afford it, so we're only going to build a few thousand of them for electric cars. The rest will all be gasoline. So, and if the government's saying that, what are they trying to put it on us as private individual consumers that we're going to pay for all this stuff? Who's going to put the trillions into power generating plants? Nobody. Like I said the other day, a guy in California said that if they electrified California cars as they stand today, they would need 1.5 million charging units, right? Just in California. The rest of the country, it would be insanity. How much would be needed? 1 nobody's going to pay to build them. And two, even if they built them, they're useless if there's no power to power them. 4 superchargers, 4 of them, use as much electricity as 250 houses. Do the math if they're going to do millions of cars. It's an absurd proposition as it stands today. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.